choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Look at that. That's beautiful. It's got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you.
Hi folks, John Cordisco back again with another great chess video for you. This is from a game that was played on Monday, June 17th, 2013. It's from the 8th Tal Memorial Super Tournament in Russia between Fabiano Caruana as white Italian-American representing the Italian Federation, rated 2774, and my buddy Carl Nakamura from the United States, black, 2784 rating. It's going to be a Sicilian Nadorf, and this is probably a spoiler, but I gotta tell you, Carl's on a hell of a run. Hell of a run. He's playing really, really well, and I'm real proud of him. And I think the next year and a half, maybe 2 years, Carl's going to make his move. You get these windows of opportunity. One, you have to recognize that the opportunity is there, and then you have to jump through the window. And I think Carl can do it. He's more than good enough. He's more than skilled enough. Let's see how it goes. In this game, though, he's playing black. It's going to be a Sicilian Nadorf. C5, knight to F3. I'm going to kind of go through the opening a little bit quick. It's all pretty much standard stuff. Knight takes, knight to F6. Knight to C3, A6, F3, knight to B5, bishop D6, bishop D3, just developing. I like that H5 move. Kind of clamps down any pawn storm that white might have on the king side. Queen to D2, just developing a knight to D7, knight to D5, knight takes, pawn takes. Now, you can't see it off screen, but I have my Fritz 13 computer running, and it's about a third of a pawn advantage for white. Now, normally myself, if I'm playing black against E4, I normally play Scandinavian. Maybe I'll start fooling around with Sicilian. I don't know. We'll have to see. Been awful cramped up lately in my Scandinavian. It seems to have a lot more chances for black with Sicilian. Well, you have Garry Kasparov, arguably the greatest player that ever lived, or close to it, and he sticks by the Sicilian to this day. So maybe he's right. He is the best. Bishop to F5, bishop to E2, rook to C8, rook to C1. Obviously, white's going to castle on kingside. Queen to H4 check. Now I like that because one of two moves can happen. Either the bishop can block, or the pawn can go to G3. I think If the bishop blocks, the queen will just move off. It'll be a wasted move for white. G3 is Fabiano's choice. I'll tell you the truth, I think in that weakens his kingside. Queen F6. Those two squares are weakened. The F3 and H3 squares are weakened once that G-pawn moves. White castles. Bishop D7. Knight to A5. Rook to C7. Bishop to D3. Now, if you go to look at it, this is black's good bishop. And they say good because the center pawns here are on dark squares. I'm assuming that's the idea, to get rid of black's quote-unquote good bishop. Castles by black. C4. Finally, Carl takes. Queen takes. It's about a half a pawn advantage for white. I like both sides' chances, really. I mean, white's got a pretty good center, holding some key squares. These two squares here, 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 here. I mean, it's doing okay. This is white's good bishop here, and I like black as well. I mean, this is a good spot here for the knight. This bishop here I'm not too keen on, but you know, we'll see how it works out when the queen moves. Sorry for all my designs there, but I got a little carried away. Rook to E8. B4. Bishop to F8. It's still about a half a pawn advantage for white. Nothing's much really changed. I think they're just maneuvering around trying to gain some space here. Rook C to E1. That was a little surprise to me. I thought he would move the F rook to E1. Of course, you'd have to guard the F pawn first, but I would wait until the F pawn was guarded, then I would move it. But he wanted to move the C rook. G6. Now I think it's a good time to pause and take a look at the position. I drew some arrows after black's 21st move, G6. Now you'll see a lot of arrows all over the place. That basically represents this area in here is controlled by white. Black's pretty much backed up here, and you can see he's got some space on the king side. Now it's only a 0.6 advantage for white at this point, but I'd rather play white at this point, but we're going to have to see how it works out. But on the queen side, white's got a huge space advantage. Queen to D2. F5. One other thing I wanted to point out is both sides do not have a light colored bishop. So we'll see how it works out in the light squares. Knight to F6. And as you can see, black wants to go E4 to open up white's king side. Bishop to B6. Caruana is hitting Nakamura's rook. I think it might have been interesting instead of bishop to B6 would be C5. That might be interesting. After bishop to B6, rook C to C8, he just backs off the rook. F4. Almost inviting white to open up his position. But Hikaru doesn't go for that. He goes E4. He pushes his E-pawn right through. Now I want to mention, back here on rook to C to C8, F4, and then E4. After rook C to C8, the score was exactly even. And after black's 25th move, E4, it's a tiny advantage for black. I think white's missing it here. We'll see how it works out. Bishop to D4. Rook to C7, he puts the rook right back in H3. Interesting might have been queen to B2 instead, and then knight to G4 with a quarter point advantage for black in that case. Right now it's about a third of a pawn advantage for black, a little more. Bishop to g7, queen to g2. Now, if White had played bishop to bishop 6 again, he would have won e3, rook takes, queen takes, rook takes h3. And that would have been about 2/3 of a pawn advantage for black. Interesting, though. That's an interesting position, to be sure. After queen to g2, b5, and then a takes. Now, interesting might have been instead of a takes, is bishop takes f6, bishop takes g4, bishop check, king move, h takes, h takes. Now that would have been over a pawn advantage for black, but that's a very interesting position as well. After a takes b5, a takes b5, bishop takes, bishop takes. Now slowly but surely, black is taking over this game. And I gotta tell you, I'm very impressed. In the last couple of games in this tournament that Hikaru won, he hasn't been impatient. He hasn't caused outrageous moves, kind of like Tal-esque in the old days, where you would make an outrageous move or a sacrifice, and it's so complicated you're hoping that your opponent will pick the wrong move in the complications. He's showing a lot more patience, and to me that's showing a lot more maturity. Sure, we all have our emotional up and downs, where we lose, we win, and you see all these players on interviews, and Carl's even come to a couple of interviews he's lost the game, which is really hard for those guys, because these guys really take this to heart. It's their living, and it's what they do. And I gotta tell you, this shows some, I think, some discipline on Carl's part, which is only a good thing. G4, H takes, H takes. Bishop to d4 check, very similar to the variation we went through a few moves ago. King to e2, queen to f6. That's a little over a pawn advantage for black, but I like black's position here. I think it's easier to play. Knight to c6, b6. Well, somewhat interesting would have been, instead of b6, b takes, king to g3, e3, g5. Now that's a wild position there. That's a small advantage for black. After b6, g5 for white. I'm not sure if that was the right move, to tell you the truth. I think maybe better, instead of g5, might have been f5. Rook to a8, queen to h3, and king to g7. Would have been a lot more interesting to play, that's for certain. After g5, queen to f5. Now the queen's back up on the light squares. The pawns can't harass her anymore, the f and g pawns. Now here's where I think, I'm not sure if it was time pressure. That queen to f5 was black's 35th move. And it's almost a 2-point advantage currently for black. Now this is where I think Caruana made his mistake. He went c5. And it jumps to over 3¼ points. Now, looking at the computer here and some calculating that I did, I think queen to h3 might have been his best choice. Because after b takes, queen takes, g takes, king to g3, it's still hard for white. But I don't think it's as hard. c5 was, I think, is his mistake. I mean, all the moves were going to be bad. I guess you just got to pick a move that's the least bad. D takes, knight to e5. I don't think rook to e3 really does much. It would be queen takes, knight to e5, c takes, queen takes, rook to c2 check, queen takes, bishop takes, with a huge advantage for black. After knight to e5, c takes b. Now granted they're doubled pawns. You're up 2 pawns, but the 2 passers are both doubled. d6. I don't think queen takes would have done much. It goes through a long scenario on the computer here. I'll give it to you. Rook to c2, king to g3, rook takes c5, queen takes, queen to d3 check, rook to f3, bishop f2 check. Of course, you know the rook can't take because he's being pinned by the queen. King, queen takes, g takes, check, king takes, bishop takes, with a full piece up for black. After d6, rook to c3, Caruana plays rook takes. Maybe the last shot might have been knight to g4, king to g7, knight to knight 6. Might have been worth looking at. After rook takes e4, king to g7, and Caruana resigned. It goes through a small scenario here in the computer. Knight, rook takes, d7, rook takes, queen for white, bishop takes, knight, rook takes, queen to b2 check, rook to c3, queen takes, pawn takes. There's really nothing he can do. Rook to d3, rook to f2, and the king's boxed in, and then mate. It was a great win for Caro. I think I would say the early, middle game, middle game, he showed incredible patience. He didn't push it. He knew he had the advantage, and he built it up slowly over time. Made his position stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm real proud of him. He's doing really well. Maybe I'm a little biased towards Caro, but hey, everybody has their likes and their dislikes. Well, folks, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I just want you to remember that if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. And I hope to see all of you in the next video. Please comment below the video, and please subscribe. Take care, folks. Go Caro. Bye-bye.